The Galactic Council chamber was a masterpiece of acoustics and intimidation. Its vaulted dome a lattice of living crystal absorbed and refracted every voice into a balanced chorus, so that no species with more lungs or louder tympana could drown out the others. 1,000 bioluminescent veins pulsed in the walls like the heartbeat of a slumbering leviathan, the light coalescing around the central dais where Archon Vale floated in a column of magnetic air. His species, the Keth, lack eyelids and therefore never blinked. It made the Archon's gaze seem eternal as it washed over the tiers of delegates. Holosigils spun above each seat, fractals for the Dern mathematicates, inked ribbons for the amorous quorums, perfect spheres of darkness for the Thernaclumans. Over the human section flickered the simplest sigil of all, a blue sphere mottled with white. "Order," Vale said, his voice blooming as harmonics in the hall. "We convene for the security directive. The subject is the Terran Anthro-Collective, humans, and their uncontrolled proliferation." A susurration rolled like a tide. Delegates clicked and trilled, murmured and shaved scent molecules into the air. A Thernacluman unrolled its shadow like a rug. The human seat was conspicuously empty. Earth had not been invited. Ambassador Challen of the Amorous rose, skin glimmering with the bioink of her pod. "We have guided countless emergent species to safe stasis. Yet the Terrans ignore norms. They colonize airless rocks, splice foreign genomes into their crops without consensus, trade without registry. Worst, they innovate weaponry unpredictably, snorted a Dern, his mouth parts clacking. They iterate faster than our models. Their variance destroys forecasting." "Exactly." Challen spread her palms. "They change too quickly, and they do so with a cultural preference for confrontation." Archon Vale let the silence ripen. Behind him, a holoswarm rendered Earth's outward push, a chain of dim magnets, domes embedded in rust-light deserts, sprawl of orbital yards around Titan, free ports at Neptune's Trojans, trade lines crisscrossed like threads in a loom. "The directive proposes containment," Vale said at last. "We blockade Sol with partnered fleets. We interdict unregistered human colonies and repossess contraband war tech. We will not harm civilians." At that, a ripple of chittering laughter cut him off. Vale ignored it. "But we will demonstrate supremacy. I invite concerns." Ambassador Saya of the Rawn bubbled in her grav chair. "When the Threnians resisted, you leveled 3 moons, and they learned compliance," said Vale. Evenly, the Thernacluman made no sound, but chill sank into the room from the back. A minor species delegate, one of the Uri, plankton eaters with glassy skulls, ventured. "Has anyone tried simply asking for treaty?" The room turned on him like a flock. Vale's jaw ridge lifted a fraction. "We offered registership and strict tech-sharing protocols after the incident at Gliese for 112, he said. Their response was to field an unlicensed AI to negotiate with us. Our law forbids non-biological representation. A disgrace," muttered a Dern. "And yet," Challen said carefully, "Earth is not solely warlike. Their music is beautiful." The Rawn ambassador finished. "Yes, they will still sign after a show of force. They will kneel," Vale said. "It is what primitives do when their huts burn." His voice failed to register the small clench in his own feeder limbs. The vote took 9 minutes. Light columns flared above each delegation, then guttered into the summation glyph. When the dome dimmed, Archon Vale spoke the verdict with the gravitas of an eclipse, by a majority of 79. With abstentions recorded, the Council enacts Security Directive 6107, containment of the Terran Anthro-Collective. Partner fleets will initiate blockade operations at Sol and enforce seizure orders across human holdings. He paused for effect. The Council does not declare war. Across a few seats, heads turned toward the human sigil, blue, white, spinning. It did not look concerned. It just kept turning. High above them, out in the dark between the stars, ships were already burning. Europa Station had been designed by optimists. The architects imagined it as a white rib cage embracing the moon's equator, its habitat rings glowing faintly beneath Jupiter's terrible auroras. Glaciers stretched below like the hides of sleeping beasts. The station's designers placed a public gallery with reinforced glass, where school children could watch geysers erupt like silver blossoms against the black. On the day the council fleets arrived, the gallery was full of tourists and a class from Ceres. The first salvo did not target the gallery, not intentionally. Plasma lances crisscrossed through the station's spine clean, surgical arcs that should have punched through hull and spaced only vacuum. But the energy distribution was tuned for warships, not for rotating habitats that lived and breathed on structural resonance. The beams made the station sing in a frequency no one had meant it to know. Bulkheads buckled. A ring shuddered out of true, cracked. Atmosphere howled. Teachers strapped children into evacuation pods. A father held his daughter in a gravity corridor as red strobes lit the walls. They made it into a pod just as a second volley struck. The pod launched. It joined a cloud of tiny silver seeds scattering toward the ice dot above. The blockading fleet drifted like a net of bioluminescent fish. The largest ships were Keth spindles bristling with shield sails. Faster craft from the Dern braided around them like polished thorns. They broadcast a message on all open protocols, human civil authorities, surrender works, docks, and compute. You are under council containment. Comply to ensure safety. The message was repeated in 27 languages. None were human languages. Within 30 minutes, the net erupted. Shortwave from Mars screamed. Titan shipyard relays spat compressed footage. A Ceres hydroponic diva wept and sing-speak to her 30 million followers. The emotion of the day was not fear, not yet. It was disbelief curdled into fury. On Earth, the United Nations had been a tired thing, polished by ceremony and dulled by compromise. By sunset over the Atlantic, it shed its ceremonial skin. Persistent rivals free Lagos, the Pan-European Compact, the Pacific Syndicate, the Caliphate of the Two Seas. The Andean polity sent their delegates up the same glass elevators in New Geneva and signed the Emergency Cohesion Doctrine with shaking hands. Nobody loved it. Everyone understood it. Admiral Sofia Hernandez stood in the cavernous gloom of Dock 18 at the Titan yard, the breath in the air turning to faint halos. She was 55 and carried the quiet intensity of those who had witnessed disasters and chosen, afterward, to be useful. Her aide, Lieutenant Aaron Nair, jogged at her side, boots thunking on the steel like heartbeats. You understand, Nair said, that if we fire first we can't unring the bell. They already fired, Hernandez said, not slowing. At civilians. The bell was theirs. They turned a corner and encountered their belle, the resolute Dawn. Even incomplete, she was beautiful in the way of predators and avalanches. A hull of black metamaterial drank the light. Around her spine, stacked like vertebrae, rested the segmented rings of a mass driver 20 kilometers long. Coiled so tightly, the eye at first did not register the scale. Her drive vanes were macro-printed with ceramic muscle. Her radiator wings unfurled as fields of dusk. Embedded along her flank lay the concealed bays, where a different kind of weapon slept iceball drones studded with guidance spikes, unremarkable to the most meticulous scan. Diagnostics. Hernandez said. Compressors are green, Nair said. AI wake at 30%. Swords. 3/4. Hernandez ran her hand along the bulkhead. We're out of time for perfect. She raised her wrist. Bridge, this is Sophia. Bring Dawn online. Quietly. The ship's AI surfaced with the crisp coolness of a winter lake. Good evening, Admiral. Its voice had been trained by poets to be reassuring without seeming condescending. Rules of engagement. Defensive counterforce. Prioritize de-shielding. Minimize collateral. No strikes on non-combatant platforms. Acknowledged. I have extrapolated the Council Fleet's command delay latency. Window exists. How long? Long enough. The Admiral smiled despite herself. Then let's make it count. As Titan spun beneath them, the Dawn unlatched from scaffolds and glided into black, joined by 3 sister hulls, Kite of Winter, Ulysses Pact, and Madrugada. From hidden yards around Neptune rose a handful of leaner craft and a swarm of decoy tugs that chattered, bickered, and then fell into formation like birds. Humanity had never moved in perfect step. It didn't now, but it moved together. The blockade around Seoul was beautiful from a distance and sloppy from up close. It had been designed by admirals who trusted in superior technology and a doctrine of overwhelming presence. The net included sensor pickets broadcasting at saturation, interdiction cruisers, and Keth capital spindles with shimmering shield sails tuned to spit plasma aside like rain. On paper, capitalized, it was impenetrable. Earth had misread paper before, sometimes fatally. So the Dawn did not try to break the net. She went around it the way a knife goes around a bone. Human war doctrine had a new name scribbled at the top, combinatorics. Instead of symmetrical answers, it mashed together cheap, brutal physics and narrow AI that feasted on chaos. Kinetic slugs were old tech. Everyone had them, but few had pushed them so far into the obscene. The Dawn's spinal driver took a meter-thick ingot of tungsten, massed around it a jacket of Aragol shot through with smart dust, and then whispered to it with magnetic fields until it left the barrel at an appreciable fraction of light. Shields tuned to lens energy did not lens mass any more than a hand catches a meteor. The first Keth spindle died without understanding it had been in a fight. 1 second it was a lit cathedral in orbit, its sailors humming to the tune of Vale's triumph. The next, a grain of man-made comet cut it into a bouquet of spinning segments that blossomed outward in terrible silence. Half the fragments trailed molten veins where internal reactors had ruptured. The rest were black geometry tumbling through a new math. The shock wave, such as it existed, was doctrinally irrelevant at vacuum. The panic was not. Fleet-com lagged. The council net had been assembled from partners with different control systems grafted together. Like mismatched arteries, orders had to move through 3 protocols and the personality quirks of 2 sentient navigators who disliked each other's aesthetics. The Dawn's AI, baptized in human bickering, anticipated. Second spindle slewing shields, the AI sang. Rephase target by 19 milliradians. Do it, Hernandez said. The second slug blossomed its Aragol jacket early, shredding itself into a fan of glittering dust that solidified into one thick bullet. At the instant before impact, the reconfiguration confounded the shield lattice. The Keth flagship took the hit off axis, survived barely, and then bled atmosphere in a sacral fountain of crystals. The third and fourth shots were not shots at all. Iceball drones spooled from the Dawn's flank, dormant until a council picket approached. Then the ice peeled away in vapor, and the cores woke like hornets, coordinating on beamline whispers, darting into sensor cones with the appetizing signature of lifeboats. A Dern corvette swerved to protect the civilians. The hornets chewed her engines with grit lasers meant for mining. Chaos spread like ink in water. On the Dawn's bridge, Lieutenant Nair watched feeds scroll. The Thurnic-Lumen ships are hanging back. Wise of them, Hernandez said. They probably know better than the Keth what a slug does to doctrine. And the Keth, angry meant predictable. Angry meant they would commit the reserves in a rush, surge their shield sails to frontal strength, and expose their rumps, give them something to chase, Hernandez said. The Madrugada flared her heat sinks white, then cold, then white again, patterning her radiators with a code that said in any language, I am wounded and fleeing. To Keth corvettes peeled to go for the kill. They didn't see the tug cluster pretending to be smashed debris. When they passed, the tugs fired 10,000 needle-sized pellets in contrapuntal waves. Every fifth pellet carried a microcapacitor that detonated at shield contact, not to penetrate, but to punch holes, momentary nulls in the field. Into those holes went things that a human engineer had called, with dark fondness, staplers. The staplers did what office staplers do. They bound surfaces that were meant to move. They clamped shield generators to external braces, stuck flight control vanes at 3 degrees of useless, welded escape hatch seams into tragic jokes, a meter long, sweetly stupid, astoundingly effective. War loved ugly children. Within 13 minutes of the first kinetic strike, half of the net's suppressive capability had gone dark or frantic. The other half pulsed with contradictory orders. The humans swarm did what it had evolved to do in savannas long gone. It found confusion and made it worse. Pressed advantage where the herd stumbled. Kept moving. Signal from the Keth Fleet Command, Nair said, surprised. It's a surrender conditional for our ship only. Hernandez frowned. They think we're pirates. Recommend we do not correct them, the AI said. Let them persist in a bad model. Agreed, Hernandez said. Dawn to fleet, Phase 2. Phase 2 was teeth. Boarding pods cut free. their hulls packed with the worst things Earth had ever taught itself: room clearance algorithms. Born from procedurals and city raids now turned inside out. Less about killing than about paralyzing a target with precision. Boarding teams were not the special forces stereotypes from drama feeds. They were engineers first, killers last. They treated carters like puzzles and bulkheads like stories told in metal. They slipped into the Keth flagship through a seam left by the second slug. Gravity was unkind. Blood beaded and traced cords from ruptures on the ceiling. Petals of hull fluttered with faint residual heat. Hernandez watched from the bridge with the stillness of someone in church. "Commander Zhu," she said to the boarding lead, no triumph. "Only objectives," Zhu said. "Objectives only." They took a shield room intact. They treated wounded sailors without comment. They carried out the flagship's nav core, a shimmering organ of light, and tucked it in a cradle like a child. The council fleets broke. Some jumped out. Some froze, awaiting wiser orders that would never arrive. A few fought on from habit, heroes in a lost doctrine. Hernandez let most of them go. She wasn't interested in a massacre. She needed witnesses. When the smoke cleared, there was always a kind of smoke. The dawn stood at the quiet heart of a storm. On every frequency that human receivers could speak, the Admiral transmitted the same message. "This is Admiral Sofia Hernandez of the United Terran Cohesion Fleet. We are defending our homes. We will not pursue fleeing vessels. We will not strike hospitals, life support infrastructures, or cultural vaults. We will not kneel. If you approach our civilian stations armed, we will remove your ability to harm them. Stand down." For an answer, the void gave her 1,000 overlapping dialects. In some of them, she was a monster. In others, a lesson. In a few, a prayer. Footage always found the council sanitized, curated, bent toward narratives useful to power. This footage cut through anyway. There were too many witnesses, too many receivers. Truth arrived like a flood, and the council lacked sandbags. The chamber lights were dimmer than usual, as if the living crystal had decided to be solemn. Archon Vale floated again on his column of magnetized air, but there was a stiffness in the way his feet or limbs splayed that the Keth in the gallery recognized and others did not. His dorsal crest had tightened to razor straight. He had slept, perhaps, but not well. Holo pains stitched the events together, the kinetic lance shredding the first spindle, the second hit blooming early in a glittering fan, the human drones waking from ice like startled fish, the staplers clamping with implacable cheer, boarding teams stepping through drifts of frozen vapor, and treating wounded enemies without flinching. The chamber, the cathedral of consensus, was a vacuum waiting for a sentence. Chelon of the Amorous broke first. "This cannot be correct. It is verified from 12 independent channels," intoned the recorder. "Cross-validated against council black boxes. A fluke," Adern insisted. "A clever trick. They cannot sustain. How many of our war doctrines assume energy as primacy?" The Ron ambassador cut in. "How many model kinetic as obsolete in the face of shield tech?" Her chair bubbled, a sign of distress. "Enough," Vale said softly. "It carried anyway." He turned to the Thurnaclumen. Their shadow sheet rippled. To call it a face was wrong, but when it looked at him, he felt seen in ways he hated. "What do you advise?" Vale asked, unable to keep the bitterness from his mouth. The Thurn spoke like velvet poured over knives. "We advised caution before. You preferred theater." Murmurs spiked, died. Vale, long a master of the chamber, felt it slipping. He grasped for familiar handholds. "We gave the humans chance after chance to accept guidance. They rejected it. Their response to containment was this." He gestured helplessly at the frozen carnage still hovering around the room. "We cannot let savagery drive policy." A door at the chamber's edge opened with protocol-violating ease. Guards startled. Delegates turned with the astonishment of people in a dream. The human envoy entered alone. She was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit of smart fabric that corrected microfolds faster than light could reflect. The scar across her eyebrow had been left unfixed, a choice. A pin at her collar bore the blue and white of Earth, but behind it shimmered a mosaic of other symbols: the stars of Lagos, the knotted waves of the Pacific Syndicate, the steep triangle of the Andean flag, a cuneiform shard from old Iraq. The message was clear: even to species without a sense for human heraldry. I am not one nation. I am all of them, Protocol screamed. Vale lifted a limb. You are not recognized. I didn't ask recognition, the envoy said. And her voice carried, not because the acoustics loved it, but because she pushed it from a place beneath lungs, behind sternum deeper. I came to talk. You cannot try and stop me, she said, and then smiled, taking the acid from it. Please don't. I prefer not to embarrass anyone. Something like a laugh went through the chamber. It sounded like water released from old pipes. The envoy approached the dais without hurry. She set a data crystal on the table, the action almost humble. Footage from Europa Station, she said, and the holo obediently pivoted. Rings collapsing. Lifeboats. You said surrender to ensure safety. We have names for the children in those pods. I can give them to you if you want to put them on your conscience in a language you understand. Vale drew in breath. We announced the blockade as a non-lethal interdiction, and then fired first. The envoy didn't raise her voice. Somehow it darkened anyway. You expected primitives to kneel. We didn't. We won't. The Thurnaclumen's shadow rippled, attentive. We're not here to conquer you. The envoy continued. We don't need new gods. We have enough old ones. We are here to survive, and to make more music, and to be loud and wrong and learn, and to succeed so hard it scares us. That's the human project. Chellan spoke, almost pleading. And your strike, the brutality of it? Brutality is a matter of context, the envoy said. We targeted your doctrine, not your families. We avoided life support infrastructure. We treated your wounded. We showed restraint you did not show us. She took a breath. But we will not pretend to be small to soothe your fears. We will not apologize for defending our children. Vale stared at her, remembering the vote. The confidence, the easy cruelty of bureaucratic certainty. He thought of his son, far away in the Keth nurseries, lifting his feet or limbs for sugar threads. He adjusted his crest and felt the chamber's eyes like weights. What do you want? He asked. The envoy smiled wryly. We want what everyone with a beating heart wants, to be left alone, until we knock on your door of our own will. Trade, if it's fair. Cultural exchange, if it's mutual. Treaties we actually sign, because we consent to them. Not the boot on our neck while you call it guidance. And if we refuse? The envoy's gaze went to the holo still looping the dawn's work. Then we'll keep doing what we did. Smarter next time. We learn quickly, in the top tier. The Yuri delegate, the one who had asked about simply asking, lifted his glassy skull and said, Perhaps we ask. Then, murmurs broke into real talk. The Ron ambassador's chair bubbled in a pattern that signaled a profound shift. The Dern mathematicate began recalculating doctrine on the spot. One whispered to another with a click that rhymed with respect. The Thurnaclumen spoke last. We propose a moratorium. No council fleet within 3 AS of Sol. No human weapon tests within 1 of our cultural vaults at Ebor. Exchange observers. Begin again. Vale felt his chest hollow, his position sliding. He could dig in. He could declare the humans abominations, double the fleets, turn the war honest. He could watch the crystal lattice of order splinter overyears into factions. That cheered destruction as justice. He saw himself riding that entropy like a champion until it unhorsed him and trampled his name into a footnote. Or he could survive and learn. He looked at the envoy. She did not gloat. Her eyes were tired and alive and unsurrendered. He recognized something in her that was older than species, the stubborn light of those who carry their people forward whether the path is blessed or not. Moratorium, he said. The word tasted like medicine. Observers. Negotiations under a new charter that allows non-biological agents to speak. It hurt him to say it. He said it anyway. We will publish a censure of the Europa action. We will call it a tragedy, the envoy nodded. We'll bury our dead, she said. Then we'll talk. Peace. Chellan ventured, like a prayer tested in a mouth for the first time. Not yet, the envoy said. And there was no menace in it. Only clarity. But perhaps. Not war. Outside the chamber, the news raced across the net. Roared through domes and yards and soup stalls and temple stairs. On Europa, crews sealed the wounded rings and cleared carters of the glittering blood snow with brooms. And quiet jokes. On Titan, Shipwrights ran palms along hulls and murmured praises. On a Kef nursery ship, a child tasted sugar threads and laughed, his feeders sticky. Admiral Sofia Hernandez stood alone on the Dawn's observation rail, watching the sun spill over the curve of nothing. You could have taken more, the AI said, not criticizing, simply seeing. We took enough, she said. Doctrines will evolve. They always do. So will we, she smiled. Of course, far away, in a chamber meant to extinguish the snarls of history with the song of consensus. The council adjusted a fraction closer to wisdom, and Earth, bruised and burning, did what it had always done. It looked at the stars, and unapologetically, unpredictably prepared to knock on new doors.